In this video, we will be covering the transaction information section inside the client file. If you're looking at the side menu, this is going to be called balance. Starting with the top left, we have this type checkbox, and what this does is it just groups our transaction types based on the type of transaction that it is. So we see that when we click on that, we have this new view here. We see that we have one fee stay only, then there's one payment cash. So it just kind of groups them together, and then you have information like the fee amount, the payment amount, discount, and hours for that. And then also, if you were to click on this eye, it's going to display that transaction. So if we click on payment, it's going to display our payment ones down here. And if we were to click view or the view for fee, it's going to display that one there. And then clear, what this does is it clears the section here, and then it displays the transactions that are not marked as done. Type is particularly useful if you have many transactions that are created. You can then group them together, and it makes them a bit easier to work with. Then over on the top right, we have this add button. This is what we can use to add new transaction items to the client file. All you have to do is just click on add. It's going to display a new menu on the right hand side. This allows you to select a new transaction type. So say you want to add a fee for tax prep. We can then type in our fee amount, and then we can do a note here if we wanted to. I'm just going to put test 2, and then pretty much you can just click save close, and this will then add that new fee. And the same thing is true if you're going to run a payment. So say if they pay you with a check, again, you do the same thing. You click on add. This time we're choosing payment check right there, and then that payment will then default to whatever the current year fee is. Right now, this client currently owes $50. We're gonna have a $50 payment, and then for the note, we could do maybe like the check number or something like that. So once you enter this information, click save, close, and that then records the transaction as a payment. Then we have the actions button. If you click on actions, there's going to be several different actions that work with this section. You have delete, and the way this works is if you select your transaction items over here, say we select these first two, click on actions, click delete, that will then delete those items. Export these selected transactions to QuickBooks in a CSV file. This will export these two items into a CSV file, which then you can then upload into QuickBooks, and then you have export to Excel, and this allows you to export this whole page into Excel, and that basically has the Excel columns will be your column headers right here, and then it has the information for all the transactions that are posted. Then we have invoices, and this allows you to email an invoice out to the client. You click on this, and it will ask if you want to send out the email text invoice, and if you hit OK, that will then send that out. The template that it sends out, you can find that in admin, messaging, and email text templates. And you're going to look for the one for the invoice. So that's where you can go to make changes to that. Then if you have sent out an invoice to the client, there's an invoice log, which if you can click on, it'll then show you what was sent to the client. You have move the transactions, and this will allow you to move the transactions that you select. You can then move them to an account year or to a linked client file. So it gives you different options depending on what has been created for other linked clients or for account years. Then we have recursive notifications, and what this does is this allows you to set up the invoice template to reoccur. So you just click on it, and then you can check the box for every, say, 7 days. This will send it out once a week, and then maximum number of the messages, you could do 4. So what we're telling it to do is send the invoice template once a week for every 4 weeks. And you click save, and that then sets it up. Once you do set that up, you can see that if you click on actions, there's a icon here that indicates that this is turned on. And then lastly, we have set new invoice number, and this requires you to select a transaction. So if I'm going to click this transaction. Actually, we'll do this one right here. And then actions, set new invoice number. It's going to then give it a new invoice number for our invoice number column right there. And then we have ePay, and you're only going to see this option if you have signed up for online processing with your Atom software. And so once you have that set up, you're going to have this ePay option. You have the options for pay with credit card or with eCheck, and depending on which one you click, that's just going to ask you for that information. Like this is for credit card number. If we did the one for eCheck, it would ask for their banking information. So that's how you can run a payment inside your Atom software. For more information on how to set this up, you can go to help up here and then make online payments through Atom. This will have information on what to do to set this up. Then we have the print button, and this gives us 3 different printing options: print hourly statement, print open invoice, and print statement. Keep in mind that for invoices, if you want something to show up on the invoice, the transaction needs to not be marked as done. So in this case, our fee state only, this will show up on the invoice because it is not marked as done, but these other 3 will not show up on invoices because they are marked as done. So keep that in mind if you want to take advantage of invoices in Atom. Then lastly, we have update, and what this does is it allows you to update transactions with copy, recursive, or with done. So say if we wanted to mark this as done because it is paid, just check that box, then click update, and that then will mark it as done. All right, now we're going to briefly discuss the column headers. Starting on the left, we have the selection box, which we've seen already. You use this to select the transaction, where you can then make changes with the actions button here. So that just allows you to select the transactions. You have the edit pencil, which will open up the transaction for edits. It opens up this side menu on the right where you can then, if you want to change the transaction type, you can mark it done or not done. You can change the date, the fee amount, you can add a note to it, and you can override the site, user, or the modified by. So, or you can copy the transaction, set recursive transaction, set automatic invoice number, manually set the invoice number. So you have a lot of different options that you can customize for the transaction. And of course, once you make any changes, be sure to click save, and that will then save your changes. Then this icon is the account users override. This is used if you want to set up other users to receive a commission for this particular transaction. Just click on the icon. It's going to display a new screen where you can select the user and select the commission roll that they did. And so you can set this up, save it to that transaction, and then that will then factor into the commission report that you can run for this. Then we have the delete icon. Only users that are set as admins or office managers will be able to delete the transactions. We have the done checkbox, which we've seen already. You can check this or uncheck it and then update it to mark as done or not done. The transaction type will display the transaction type. Date shows the date for the transaction. If it's a fee, you'll have a fee amount. If it's a payment, you'll have a payment amount. If it's a discount, you can have a discount amount in there. For payments, you have a payment method, which if you want to edit, like after the fact, you can. You just click on the edit pencil, and then you can change that payment method here. For payments, usually the payment that you select for your transaction type will default to whatever payment method that you set up in the admin category transactions page there. So that's where you can set up all of these transaction types. Then we have the adjustment type, where again, if this was an adjustment, we could have that indicated what kind of adjustment it was. Then you have the hours column, and for hours, if we go to create a new transaction, we could add the hours there. If I click on add, and then I choose fee, tax prep, there's an hours field here. I could type in the amount of hours that this took. Once I save this, it would display there. The hours will also display if you import transactions from the billable punch clock. So if you use the billable punch clock for this client, if you just go to the account information section, you have the log hours here. This is the billable punch clock. If we did have hours logged, we could go to this billable time page, and then we could import like in this example here, we could import this as a transaction type, and then that would then automatically fill in the hours that we had for that particular punch clock entry. So that's if you're using the billable punch clock. We then have a column for notes where we can, if we add the transaction, we add notes to it. We can see those here. We can also edit existing transactions and retype up the note or select a predefined note for that if we wanted to. We then have the modified by column, and this just shows the last user to make a change to this particular transaction item. Overrides, this would be, again, for commissions. If you want to change the site or the user for this, or like override the site and the user, you could do that by clicking the edit pencil. And that's where we have our override site and user settings right there, as well as the modified by for that previous column. Then we have copy and recursive for our settings column. Copy will make it so if this is selected and you click update, what this does is it'll make it so if we add a new year for our clients, so say that the client comes in for 2025, we create that new year, this transaction will then automatically copy into that new year. And so 2025 would already have that fee stay only for $80. And then recursive sets up the transaction to reoccur if that transaction has been set up to reoccur. So you can set that up by going to admin, category types, transaction types. And then I'm just going to flip it so I'm looking at just tax preparation. And you see at the bottom of our list here, we do have one for test, recur, invoice. Anything that's going to reoccur needs to have this recursive cadence set up. So number of days, 1. So this means that this will then reoccur every day. And how this works is if we were to create that transaction, and then we would need to set recursive transaction, this will then allow it to reoccur every day. And that box is checked. So then finally, we have the invoice number. This displays the invoice number if one was assigned to it. Again, you can click on edit and you can manually set the invoice number, or you can automatically set it with this checkbox right here. Then at the bottom, we have displays for our current year total, other years total. If we were to click on this, it would take us to the other accounts section of the client file, which gives us a bird's eye view of the other account files that we have. Then we have a link client total, where if we had a link client and they had a running total, it would display there. And then we have that grand total that adds it all up. Totals for this year, we have a total for fee, for payments, for discounts. If any events were billable, that amount would display there. And then if there's a variance, so the variance works with the budgeted time for events. So if you had an event that was budgeted for 2 hours, it would compare that with the amount of time that that event was open. And so it would kind of get you an idea for that. And then hours displays the total hours that we have right there. And then lastly, we also have the same add and update button at the very bottom. These are the same buttons as these two up here. It just displays at the bottom in case if you had many transactions that were created, and if you're scrolled towards the bottom to see those, you have those options right there. So that is it for this overview of the transaction section inside a client file. As you watch, there's a lot here. We will have other videos that will cover other features in this more in depth. Be on the lookout for those. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Adam Support. You can call us, email us, text us, and we would be happy to help you.